All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Beejel. And Beejel, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this is so cool how you and I met because this is the first conversation that you and I have ever had. But yet, you and I were connected by our mutual friend Marusha Murphy, and you shared with me how Marusha has helped you. You have hired Marusha and her team in your business, and on my side, Marusha is somebody that I've worked closely with for the last 2.5 years, and in that time, I have really just come to love. And in fact, I got to spend some time, a few days with Marusha this last year here in Seattle and stuff. She flew out and we got to spend some time together. And I've just really come to just love and appreciate that woman, who she is, what she stands for. And I'll tell you what, she is world class at what she does. And when she says, Kev, you need to get Beejel on your podcast and interview him, especially knowing that I've already interviewed her. I'm like, okay, I'm in. And Beejel, I know you were talking, we were talking before we hit the record button. It's like, when we have that mutual connection of this, of in this case, Marusha, who you and I just both appreciate so much, it makes it really easy for you and I to connect and just have this conversation. And especially on a podcast where it's about relationships and the value of relationships. I can't imagine a more fitting way to meet somebody. So I just wanted to honor Marusha for her role in that, and welcome you to the show. And what I'd like to do to start off with is just kind of turn over to you to share a little bit, set some context, share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you to do what you do, and just kind of let you know, who is Beejel and what are you all about?
Great. I'm going to kind of start from where I am now and then work a little bit backwards to put it
Okay.
in context. So today, we have a pioneering virtual assistant business. Are you working with home-based VAs? And I specifically work out of one specific town in Davao. So I'm based in Vegas. But the way I got here was fascinating. I kind of had to go back to almost the year 2000 when I stepped away from a corporate job into the grand old world of entrepreneurship. And we had moved from the UK to Chicago. We were there for 3 years, and from Chicago to San Diego, lived in San Diego. But right after about a year or so after being in San Diego, the business partner that I moved to San Diego for, I kind of found out was really kind of defrauding the company, telling us some lies. Anyway, long story short, we ended up losing pretty much everything. And for about the next decade or so, we had our entrepreneurial ups and downs, a lot of downs compared to ups. Sometimes it felt like, but in the year 2009, I hit a really low point, almost to a point of deep depression and contemplating suicide, because the story that I was living was not all the personal development books and the seminars I'd attended. They never painted that picture of what life would get to. But there I was. But thanks to a kind of a little bit of support from, not a little bit, a lot of support from my wife and just really friends and relationships, kind of started turning life back around again. And over the year of 2009, started to go back to seminars and really rebuild myself back up again. And right around, I think, August or so, I was like, well, what do I do now? Now I'm out of my the dark night of the soul period. I'm coming back. What do I do next as an entrepreneur? And I recognized that a lot of entrepreneurs were so stretched and overwhelmed doing so many different things in their business. So I said, I'm going to get into the virtual assistant outsourcing business. Hired 3 ladies in the Philippines, started my first business. And at the very first event I went to, I had brand new website, brand new business cards. I went to an event, I think circa August of 2009.
Okay.
And the very first person who spoke on stage happened to be in the same industry. Now, I was there to mine and build new relationships and get new clients, for my new business. And the very first speaker got up on stage, super successful, had a team of about 100 virtual assistants in the Philippines. And I was like, oh God, why me? Like, what, like of all the events I could have come to, why go to the one event where the very first person is my competition?
Mm.
However, I listened to him speak and said, well, this guy is obviously, he knows what he's doing. He's very successful. So I went up to him at the end of that. I said, hey, would you teach me the ropes? Would you teach me how to build a virtual assistant business? Long story short, we went back and forth on the phone. We met for coffee. Several weeks later, I was working with him. I went from being a, hey, can you help me, to being an affiliate, to master affiliate, to being now a VP in his company.
Wow.
And over the next 10 years, we built a company where we grew from 100 to 500 virtual assistants. But something unique happened in 2010, because now I was working with him. He sponsored my new visa. But in 2010, in June 2010, the immigration lawyer called me up and said, hey, Beejel, I've got some bad news for you. Your visa is not going to go through in time. You have two choices. Either you leave the country or you become illegal and hope that one day they have amnesty. So I said, well, I'm not going to break the law. I'm going to leave the country. So we sold everything as a family. My kids were 5 and 10 at the time. So we basically we sold everything, packed 4 red bags, 3 laptops, 2 kids, 1 wife, and we left. And we went on what became a 5-year global adventure, traveling predominantly in India and Asia, homeschooled the kids, and the most magical 5 years of the time. But what was fascinating was that the day that we were told that we had to leave the country, we could only afford for one of us. In fact, the money we had would only pay for one of us to leave the country. So we sold everything and auctioned some stuff off, raised some money. And as we kind of embraced the minimalistic lifestyle, life started to magically change. And we left the country. We traveled for 5 years, met incredible people around the world. And when I came back to Vegas in 2015, continued to work with the same person for another 5 years or so. And then in 2019, we shook hands and said our vision for how we want to grow our virtual assistant business is very unique and different. So I split off and started my own company. So that's my journey through time and space of how we got to here.
Wow, very good. That's really that is quite the story, Beejel. That is quite the story. Very good. And so now, so you started Be Epic outsourcing, and I'm just reading your shirt right there in 2019. And so now, what has happened since 2019, since you going off on your own?
Well, we've kind of accidentally kind of pioneered a brand new model. So, I didn't have the resources that my colleague had in terms of a big call center. So I wanted to work with VAs who are basically based at home. But I also knew that when you have a call center, you have to cover the high overheads, which means that you've got to pass those high overheads cost to the end client. So we pioneered a new model using a team of home-based VAs happened to be in the same town that the call center was in. A lot of the management who had either left before or after came and said, hey, we want to work with you, Beejel. And so we have this virtual team in the same town, but every 90 days I pay for them to get together, to get together for picnics and barbecues and dinners together, so that we retain the virtual culture. We don't go and cold recruit. So basically everyone who we work with is referred to us by somebody we know. And that's kind of over 10 years of building relationships with virtual assistants in the same town in the Philippines. And most of my clients have come from referrals. So literally 99.9% of my business, Kevin, has come from the relationships built over time and that referral engine. And that's kind of where we kind of created this concept, what we call the KLTR concept, where there's people who know, like, and trust us, but they don't always remember to refer people to you because there's so much digital noise out there, so much chaos out there, that even your best friend may not refer somebody to you because in the moment they just don't remember that that's what you do. So it's not enough just to have these relationships. It's how do we stay connected to these relationships in a way that's authentic and not spammy and not kind of trying to sell every time you kind of meet a friend, because we don't want to that's going to quickly break up a good relationship. So that the fine line between the professional side and the friendship side.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, so what I'd like to do now that we've got this context set, I'd like to shift gears just a little bit. And I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. Have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person. And Beejel, I'm just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with the tactical side of the answer, and
Okay.
that is I mentioned earlier in my story that I met this individual at an event, 2010, sorry, 2009. I was sat in the front row of a seminar, a workshop here in Vegas, and I just rebranded myself in the outsourcing space. I had hired my first 3 virtual assistants in the Philippines. And the very first person on stage was named by a chap by the name of Davin Michaels. He at the time he lived in Los Angeles, and he got up on stage. He was introduced by another fairly well-known speaker trainer by the name of Marshall Silver, known as the world's most famous hypnotist. Anyway, so this was Davin's actually first time speaking. So Davin had actually traveled to Vegas to interview Marshall for a TV show that he was recording. And Marshall said, "Hey, why don't you speak about your business, your virtual assistant business, to my group of attendees?" Davin agreed. So Davin was basically being interviewed by Marshall at this event as a speaker. And as I heard Davin speak, I had mixed feelings because on one side he was literally, selling the room on working with him and his virtual assistants in the Philippines, and thus, in theory, taking away all my business, right? So, but as I listened to him speak about his success, from a very young age, I think from age of 15 was when he started his first business, multiple successes, and the outsourcing business was just his most recent success. So I said, no, I have to, one of the things that Marshall teaches in his seminars was how do you win this game? That's a win for everybody, right? So I went up to him and said, "Hey, would you, can we have a quick call?" And this was during the event. So this was basically on the first break at the event. And again, this is when someone's up on stage, you put them on a pedestal as a kind of a celebrity, as kind of a that they're not reachable by the people in the audience, right? But Davin said, "Yeah, sure, give me a call." So he basically wrote down his number. It was an office number, and I think on Monday I called the office number. I left a message, and a few hours later, Davin called me back, and so we talked. We met in San Diego for coffee, and I said a few weeks later, Davin, and we also talked about both our mutual desire to speak on stage as well, and our visions for growing the business. I shared my vision, what I could contribute to the company. And God, 6-8 weeks later, Davin said, "You know what? Rather than work separately, why don't we work together?" And we did. So around about September, October of 2009, we shook hands and started working together. And that relationship took us all over the world. We spoke on the stages together all throughout the US and in India, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, and in the UK. And we built a very successful business. And everything I kind of learned about virtual assistants and outsourcing has been because of that relationship that started 10 years earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Very good. So what is the biggest thing that transpired out of the relationship that you and Davin had that would have never happened had you not met and started that relationship with Davin? I mean, I know you guys did some great things together in business, but like, what's the biggest thing that really stands out in your mind?
Wow, that's such a loaded question, Kevin. 10 years of working together.
Yeah.
But I will say this: if of the many things, it's the just go get it done, right? Like when I observed him in action, the time from idea to implementation, there was let's get it done type thing, and let's not let anything stand in the way. And again, sometimes we don't have everything. We don't have the T's crossed and the I's dotted.
Yep.
And a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we allow perfection to create procrastination in what we do. I certainly have, But when I saw him in action, it was, let's get it done, let's get it implemented, we'll perfect it as we go along, right? And that's kind of how all big businesses operate. The first Apple computer was not perfect, the first Apple Watch was not perfect, the first iPhone was not perfect, and yet it attracted the clientele, helped these businesses grow. And so that speed of implementation, that discipline, that daily discipline of getting things done and working with a team, right? Davin was the CEO, but he knew how to build and manage teams masterfully. And that was kind of some very big takeaways that we as entrepreneurs should not, be wearing all the hats in our business.
Yeah. That is, I mean, such a big thing. And like, and you brought up Apple as an example. And, I'm sure you guys experienced this in your business as well, that, you end up creating those fans who they just love what you as a company stand for, and they understand that, like, okay, the next evolution of the new thing might not be perfect, might have a few kinks or what have you, but I don't care because I want the next thing. I want, and especially those first responders, if you will, those people that are just I mean, like, you see all the time when Apple releases a new thing, you got lines outside the store, people waiting because they want it. And they have these raving fans that they are okay with that next version maybe not being perfect and stuff. And you just create this following of people who are these big fans of yours. And I'm sure you had the same exact experience and stuff. And so that's incredibly powerful. Incredible. So, and you mentioned there was somebody else that you wanted to talk about in honor as well.
Yeah, and that second person was my wife. As I mentioned earlier, that we've gone through our ups and downs, this year, November, we've been together 31 years. We celebrated
Wow.
our 26th wedding anniversary this past July. And despite all the ups and downs, being on the verge of broke, a couple of times as entrepreneurs, that stayed strong. It stayed strong throughout all the challenges. And I believe, when one is down, the other is up, and the other is having a bad day, the other, it's a mutual support for each other. And I think, especially in the world of entrepreneurship, and especially the micro world of entrepreneurship, there's a very fine line between, the personal life and business life. Whatever people say, we have to be understanding of each other's, responsibility, not just to the family, but also to the business. And that unwavering support, that she's a rock for me in my darkest hours. And I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for her support.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, as a husband myself, I haven't been married as long as the two of you have, Beejel, but we celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary in August of this year, and I can totally relate. I would definitely not be where I am without the support of that amazing woman next to me, and I am so appreciative of her. And so, yeah, I can only imagine. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, to share about a couple of people who have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business. For anybody listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like Beejel. I like the way he shows up. I like what he stands for. How can what are some resources they can get access to more of, find out what you guys are up to and what you guys are all about and stuff that they might want to take advantage of?
Yeah. So, our website is beepicoutsourcing.com. So if anybody out there listening is looking to hire virtual assistants, in fact, we use the word virtual on the front end of the conversation, Kevin, but we actually call them vital assistants, because I believe that for any, entrepreneur, solopreneur, professional, that, and we have a special program that allows someone to start as little as $5 per day, right? Now, they don't get the VA for the whole day for $5, but there are ways that you can use a VA for just an hour per day that can be instrumental. In fact, one of the ways that we teach our clients is to help use VAs to help with the relationships. When we are so connected to so many different people, we often need the support to actually just manage the relationships we already have. So we teach people how to use a $5 per day VA to manage that. But also we do, a lot of services from admin, billing, LinkedIn, across the board, social media, sales follow-up, marketing follow-up. So again, beepicoutsourcing.com is our website. You'll see testimonials from fellow entrepreneurs there, and a breakdown of our pricing model, which again is very unique in the industry.
Very good. Very good. Well, like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, Beejel. Any last words before we call it a wrap? Any last thing you want to share that's on top of your mind before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I think we often underestimate the relationships we already have. I mean, everybody talks about lead generation and marketing, and it's important. But quite often there's a wealth, there's a treasure chest of relationships we already have. We're just not the best at keeping them alive and active that can benefit us. So, take that time, invest in the relationships you already have. In fact, just a few seconds per day of dropping someone a message can be a game changer for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can certainly attest to that. Somebody who has, I myself have placed such a high value on relationships, both for business and personal relationships. And from my experience, relationships are certainly the most valuable asset we have in business, but just personal relationships as well. And so, once again, Beejel, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, share from your heart, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.